that. And now, welcome, Hope. Thank you to be here, and this is your stage.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thanks for having me. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session. I hope you've been enjoying the conference so far. So we're going to be talking about how do we make the case for adopting observability practices in our team, like especially as software engineers and software developers that don't hold the decision power, right? You don't make the policy and you really want to have observability. You want to advocate for observability. How do we do it, or why should we do it? To kickstart the session, yeah, I think this works. I don't know if there's anyone that can relate to, this picture here or this scenario here, where maybe there's been an issue or there's been an outage, and then you spent hours and hours trying to figure out what the problem is. And then to make matters worse, let's say maybe you inherited a code, you didn't write the code, and maybe somebody wrote the code and then left the organization, and then you need to figure out where to even start finding the problem, not to talk of even fixing it and all that. So one of the goals of this session is to be able to find out how can we get ourselves out of the situation? How can we advocate for a better life, to our management teams or even within our organization? So for my own journey to observability, I'm a software engineer at Microsoft. I work on Microsoft Cloud Infrastructure, where we manage and look for how we can provide more efficiency to our infrastructure platform. And the funny thing is that I actually heard of observability for the first time in my team. We were working with metrics. I had no idea. I didn't know what the term I didn't know it was observability. I just knew that we had a metrics set up to our services, and we were just doing something. We just didn't know what it was. And then someone just casually mentioned one day, I was like, oh, we need to do more observability and had more metrics. And I was like, okay, that sounds fancy. And I started to research about it. So that curiosity sort of led me to KubeCon. I attended KubeCon and I attended Observability Day. And I was trying to understand what other people were doing in terms of observability. How were they adopting observability? What practices are you using? What does it mean to you? I just wanted to get our context, right? And that led me to meeting with the Open Telemetry community, an amazing, amazing community. And then I met with the Open Telemetry working group, where they work with end users. Yeah, it's actually, I made a mistake there. It's supposed to be end users working group, right? So they connect with end users and try to see how they can help you, implement or adopt Open Telemetry in your community. It's like a very, very nice subcommittee under Open Telemetry. And if you are really interested, if that's something that interests you, you are looking for ways to understand Open Telemetry more and how to use it, I'm very, very happy to make the connection. So I got connected to this group and I had more insight, I had more perspective into how this can actually help us to achieve more. And I started to see that we had a lot of gaps we needed to fill. We were doing metrics, we didn't even know what we were doing with it. And there were a whole lot more we needed to do. So then I, started to now advocate for several observability practices within my team. Currently, what I've been, working on is, can we do distributed tracing better? And can we actually, adopt Open Telemetry? That's been the two things I've been shouting about lately. Yeah. So that's about me. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to share something, whether it's a thing or two, that can help you to understand how and why you should advocate for observability within your team. Okay, so moving on. I don't know if anyone is familiar with this of course challenge. There's been a challenge going on where you sort of say something and put of course. It's just like a sarcastic way of trying to explain what you do or who you are, I'm a software engineer and of course I don't get enough rest, all this kind of thing, right? Just to paint the picture of who you are. So I decided to adapt it to sort of explain our scenario and some pain points we feel as software developers, right? And first of all, the first big one is the fact that we are constantly we're in the circle of fixing bugs, because you fix one bug and then you introduce another, and then you get to a point and you be like, you know what, this bug, it's not a bug, it's a feature, and we just want to live with it. And to make matters worse, we don't even have the right tools or the practices that can help us to debug issues. Whenever there is an issue, it's the customer that even gets to know facts, and they are the ones reporting the issue before we realize that, okay, there's an issue, and then we're spending hours trying to understand what the issue is. Or your system or our system continuously remains this mysterious black box to us. We don't understand what is going on. We just, we develop the system, we ship it to production, and it's out there, and we don't know how users are interacting with it. And yes, of course, you're not going to know, or we're not going to know until we start to, integrate or instrument the code with telemetry data and try to collect that data to help us understand what is going on. And if we don't do this, of course, we will still continue to have that mysterious black box. And this leads many developers to get to the point where they have to rely on print statements. I'm very sure most developers here have, at some sort of level, have to use print statements at some point of time to just understand what is going on in your code, especially when you get to some height of frustration. And the worst of it all is that even when you get to know about these observability practices, these amazing practices, you come to conferences like this, and you're like, okay, now so many things were said, this looks so exciting, I really want to implement this. And then you get back to your team and realize that, oh, I don't make the decisions, and I need to find a way to get buy-in from the management. And it's worse when they don't even know the term observability, when they don't even know what observability is or have the idea about observability. So it's you trying to educate them and convince them at the same time, right? So these are the pain points we feel, right? But how can we we want to move to this point, right? How nice would it be if we can have this system? I mean, even if it's not a so perfect system, but a system where you get adequate telemetry out of your system, where you have metrics that would help you identify when there is a problem, you have traces that can easily let you know where the problem is, and then having logs that gives that context on what is causing the problems. And of course, getting this telemetry data is just not enough. You need visualization dashboards. You need dashboards that will help you to be able to view and analyze this data effectively. What if we could have alert mechanism, alert systems that helps us to identify issues before they get to impact our customers? We get to know ahead of time when we know there is an issue, and we can easily mitigate it as fast as possible so it doesn't affect customers. What if you could adopt amazing observability standards like OpenTelemetry that allows us to seamlessly integrate with any observability tool? There are tons of observability tools out there, several open source ones, but sometimes the worry is, oh, what if I instrument my code with this for this observability tool and I want to switch to another, right? That's where OpenTelemetry comes in. You have that flexibility that I don't have to worry about any locking in into any kind of tool. So you have the flexibility to try as much as possible and do whatever you want with making use of this tool, right? So, and not even just about doing observability later on, like, oh, we figure out we're having too much issues, maybe which can be the current scenario right now. But what if we get to a point where observability is now incorporated into our day-to-day process? While you are writing a code, while you are developing a feature, you're already thinking about observability. You are thinking of, okay, what might be the problem? Or what metrics can we gather right now that would help us understand how this feature is being used, how it's being impacted? What if you could incorporate all those practices right from when you're developing, as opposed to something you do later, right? So I would like to know in whether you put it in chats, the Q&A session. It's really nice to understand what your current observability landscape is, right? I know I've mentioned like several things, and it's very okay if you're doing none of it. Actually, those are the kind of audience I was looking for. So it's okay if you are not doing any observability right now, or even if this is the first time you're hearing about observability, but I just wanted to get an understanding, or it'd be nice for you to also get an understanding from other people, what observability practices are currently being used. Are you using metrics, logs, traces, any tool you're using out there? Are you making use of open telemetry? So please do share in the chat. That would be really, really amazing.
Somebody just posted that the chat is disabled. I'll try to get it fixed. Just post it in the QA, and I'll process them. Just misuse the Q&A, and I'll get somebody to fix the chat.
Okay. So, yeah, moving on. So, regardless of what your current situation is, like what current landscape you are currently at, if you have no observability at all, some sort of observability. And for those that have a perfect system, that's nice and amazing. I'm happy for you. But just in case you're trying to, move from, or you don't like the situation you are in right now, and you want to move to some sort of ideal situation that you think your team should be in, this is sort of an approach I have been trying to adopt in my team, in the advocacy work I've been doing recently. So I called this like a understand, proof, plan sort of approach, and this is how it goes. First, understand. When it comes to understanding, and I think they mentioned it a lot in the panel that came before the session, understanding what your organization is. Yeah, you need to understand who your organization, like your organization, your management team, what exactly interests them, what exactly excites them. Because it's only you that sort of have that context as to, how do your management team speak? What is the current language they are currently using? Are they currently interested or bothered about retention? Maybe getting new customers? Are they, worried about the issues you've been facing? Like, for example, in our case, I know that, we've been having this great push for quality, security, and those two things are like super important. Those two things are things, the leadership team have been really pushing. And those were the languages I was trying to speak to when I was talking to my managers. If you need better quality, how do you, if we don't instrument our applications well, to be able to understand what's going on in our system, how are we going to be able to provide more quality to it? How are we even going to know what sort of quality it is, right? So understanding your management and what is, the current and the exciting time would really help you to be able to develop your case. Then the other thing is understanding your code, right? Understanding what your code is made of. How are your systems interacting with each other? Are they talking to each other, via gRPC, HTTP, in terms of API, for example? Like, what's your code structure is like? That's what is going to, allow you to know what tool or, what scenario is going to best fit your situation. Also, in terms of what is, what your system is currently at, like what is most needed right now. Are you still using print statements all over your applications? And do you need to move that to structured logs? Or do you need to, focus on metrics and alerts right now so that you can stop relying on your customers to tell you when something is wrong? Or do you need traces, especially maybe because you realize that enough is enough when you have to debug issues and then find out it's not in this component, and you have to be going one by one into different components to debug issues? What if you can easily just know where the problem is and just focus on that component, right? So you need to understand what exactly, your current code landscape is and what would be the best thing that would work for your situation. And of course, you need to, understand the observability practice that would best serve your team, starting with maybe several whatever observability practices out there, and coming to this conference is a very big step into understanding that. There are like tons of talks today around, several areas of observability that could help you and your team. So you can figure out which one exactly, or which ones of them that would be helpful to your team, and which ones you can adopt, because it's important for you to have this understanding, as that would help you to be able to prepare a better case. It's when you passionately understand how something works, that's when you're most likely to be able to convince someone better, to be able to say, I know where your pain point is, and I know where our pain point is, and this is a solution I'm providing to this pain point. Then the next part, or something I would highly recommend, is a proof of concept. I highly recommend this. I know it takes like an extra sort of work on your hand, because you most likely will be spending some time that they're probably not paying you for to do this, but it's going to really, really help you in the long run. You need to do like a proof of concept. You could take one. Like, you don't have to make it really complicated. You could take just one service. You can take some services. You can go a step further to maybe take the most critical service that is giving you guys the most issue, the most pain points, and decide I just want to, play around this things. While doing the proof of concept is going to allow you to be able to, one, prove your understanding, right? If you feel like, oh, I understand the observability practice that is best for my team, or I understand that, oh, we need metrics, or in my case, I understand that we need traces, for example. How do you want to prove that you really actually do need traces, and if it's going to work for the way your current system is, right? So having to do that proof of understanding will allow you to be able to uncover so many issues, uncover so many bottlenecks, and maybe you have amazing systems and you may not, but for me, it was like a really big pain, because then I had to realize that, oh, we want to do distributed systems, but then our systems don't interact with each other the way I was thinking in my head. So all those things are the things you're going to uncover while you're doing this proof of concept. And of course, don't take too much time doing this and just drift away, because it's very easy to feel so discouraged that looks like our system is really complicated and you don't want to do this. So just, keep the faith and just do a simple proof of concept, and to also allow you to be able to easily prove your point to your management team, because in that case, it will be less difficult when it comes to having to explain how this is going to help you. If you're going to show that without this is something we've been missing out for so long. Imagine how much time we're going to cut if we have this to be able to troubleshoot when there is an issue. Or God so good, you have an issue comes in, and then you make use of that proof of concept to actually, troubleshoot that issue as fast as possible, and people see the benefits of being able to do this. Right. So when we have this proof of concept, hopefully you're able to do this, and hopefully you get to this point. Then we now get to the point of pitching the idea. I also would recommend, starting with your teammates, because again, they are the ones that have been in this boat with you. They are the ones that are feeling this pain point with you. If you could come to your teammates with a proof of concept and say, hey, do you know I did this? And our service, I was able to get this. I was able to understand this code. And that was literally what I did. I was like, oh, I was shocked as to the level of understanding I got to know about the, concept, the particular code I was, instrumenting at that time. I was like, hey, I didn't know this is the way this code actually works. Do you know this is where this code actually works? And my other teammates was really shocked. I was like, oh, I didn't know too. So those, realization and, okay, sorry, I was talking about the chat. So those realization just allows you to be able to onboard other people, and it would give you kind of more amnesty to be able to go and make that case to actual management. And when it comes to, making the case to management, I also would say should include detailed steps on the change you're trying to propose, like, oh, what exact telemetry data do you want to focus on? We can't just say, oh, we need to do observability. There are like several areas of observability. What if you don't even have to use the word observability? Oh, can we do traces and literally just finding a way to understand our system better, specifying the exact telemetry data I want to collect, how you want to collect the data, the actual tools you want to use, like going to a level of detail so that there is going to be like less pushback, since there's going to be more clear understanding. And also adding what's in it for the management. I know this part can be hard to define, because then this is something that is supposed to just help you. Also, sometimes observability does not translate to money for the organization. It's like, how does this bring more money to us? And you have a hard time having to answer that question, right? But how can you think of that ahead of time in terms of, this comes back to part of understanding, your system and how they work, and what language you can use to sort of, explain this or kind of buy them in. So explain what is in it for them. Are they advocating for quality right now? And this is what we can do to improve our quality. Do they want customer retention? And you're trying to say, if we have alert systems, then we can always, improve the customer confidence in our platform, because we get to know issues before they get to know, all this kind of thing. So how can you include things that would make the management feel like, okay, looks like there's something in it. This is something we can actually do and something we can benefit from, right? Comes down to kind of articulating that value into what value it gives to your own organization. And I always had this part factor in cost. It's very easy to feel so overwhelmed or feel so, oh, there are so many observability out there, observability tools out there. People are using this. Oh, people are using this. Okay, let's use this. Especially when you're just starting this in your organization and this is not something they've known about, or this is not something anybody is aware about, you probably want to go into something that has very, very minimal cost. There are several open source tools out there that you can use if you are not collecting so much data right now. And maybe when you grow into now having so much data, you can now move into using, other standardized tools or better tools that you have to pay for, right? And I just put some points to consider as well when you're making your pitch or case documents. Resist the urge to say, oh, we are moving too many needles at once. We want to have metrics, logs, traces, OpenTelemetry, everything all together. Why don't we just start one at a time? Can we just focus on metrics and alerts for now, so that at least we can just improve our customer confidence? That's like a whole simple case on its own. And then you can be able to start something as opposed to going with a very huge, overpromise, and then you would be under delivering. So, and then the other part is avoiding the all or nothing approach. It's very easy to feel like, oh, I wanted to achieve this. I wanted to achieve distributed tracing, for example. But then I realized that our systems don't interact with each other the way I thought, and it's going to be really complex achieving distributed tracing. What about if we can trace each application on their own, remove the distributed out of the tracing and do tracing and enjoy the benefits of tracing, and then later on we can, make it distributed, right? So it doesn't have to be, yes, we have to get a perfect situation right now. What if we can start small, right? And I added a point of how can you make it easier for other teams to adopt, in the sense of, oh, can you provide resources? You came to a conference like this, for example, maybe gather the resources, the video links together, write an article on just helping people to be able to understand observability more and how they can make it, how they can be able to adopt it easily, right? Just kind of reducing the learning curve and finding a way to make it easier for people to adopt. So, and with that, I would end my session with this quote I found, and that sounds so interesting. summary of, if you can measure something, you can definitely understand it. And if you can't understand it, you can't control it. And if you can control it, you can improve it. So I'm hoping that I did a little bit of a job in trying to convince you on why and how you can start advocating for observability. Observability practices in your team so that you can understand your system and, more importantly, sort of make your life easier as a software engineer, right? So with that, saying thank you. And I don't know if hopefully we have time for questions.
Yeah,
and also if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, thank you so much. Great session. We have some time for questions and the chat is open, so you can use the chat or the Q&A. I have a first one while we get people typing is, what is your recommendation? So you mentioned you started with metrics and then started to distributed tracing. Somebody else in the chat was writing, they have lots of logs and the troubleshooting is really difficult. Maybe what is distributed tracing, just in a nutshell for people that are still very early with observability, and then why did you decide to go for distributed tracing?
Okay, so yeah, we already have logs in place. I understand that logs can be everywhere. Literally, I think that was what pushed us. So we already have logs in place, but then especially when you don't know where you're logging and you don't know what you're doing, you can just have so much logs in your files that it becomes so dense and information gets lost. And you're trying to find, piece different logs together to even make meaning of what is happening. And that brought me to when I came to the understanding of distributed tracing. For example, distributed tracing allows you to understand the end-to-end, flow of data, flow of communication. How is data flowing from one component to the other, and not just from component to the other. If you wrote your services and they involve several function calls, several services, I call one API to the other, all those interconnection is what distributed tracing would let you see. It will see more like, oh, I'm seeing the function call stack. This is with the hope that you instrument it correctly. And then you see how one service calls the other. You can add the fact that, oh, I get to know what data is passed to the next service and what that next service gets to. So those interaction is what traces allows you to see. Now, that made me to feel like, oh, this is going to be very, very beneficial to my team, in the sense that if you can see this interaction, then it will be easier to be able to figure out that this is where, to figure out what log file or what log statement I should be looking at, as opposed to be looking at several log files across several services that are very, very dense. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much. Yeah, people are really, I think they really enjoyed the session. Maybe another question from me. Have you thought about like kind of open sourcing, like a template for people because you have such a nice, like the pitch, the proof of concept and how to, so I was thinking, oh, that could be something like, an open source template that people can reuse for the organization.
Great idea. I never thought about it. I just felt like, I was just sharing what I've been trying to use. So,
I think that would be great. Yeah, because people struggle and seeing, okay, that's an example and I can reuse, and that would be, of course, people need to adapt and understand that could be a nice thing to do. Cool. Okay, last chance for you to ask a question. So we have a couple of people that commented on the stack. If you still want to tell us about your stack, and otherwise we are at the end of the session. We have a 10-minute break, and then we'll continue in the amazing world of observability. Thank you so much, Hope, for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining the session and listening in.
Thank you. See you on your next session. Bye.
Bye.